It was a tape recorder, innocently placed on a table, that nearly ended the life of the man who would rule Iran for over 3 decades. On the afternoon of June 27, 1981, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei walked into the Abazar Mosque in Tehran. A man posing as a journalist approached him, set down a recording device, and stepped back. Within minutes, a blast ripped through the room. The explosion left Khamenei permanently disabled, but it did not remove him from the political chessboard. Instead, it set him on a path to become the most powerful figure in the Middle East. This is the story of the second supreme leader of Iran. Born on July 17, 1939, in the holy city of Mashhad, Ali Khamenei entered a world where Iran was still the imperial state, ruled by the Pahlavi monarchy. His father, Javad, was a respected Shia cleric of Azeri descent who had studied in the holy city of Najaf before settling in Mashhad. He married Khadija Mirdamadi, and together they raised 8 children in a home that valued religious scholarship above material wealth. The family name itself derives from the village of Khamenei, rooting them in the northwestern province of East Azerbaijan. The ethnic and religious tapestry of his childhood would later become a central theme in his political strategy. While the family was respected, their life was austere. Khamenei himself has described a one-room dwelling with a basement, surviving on bread, dates, and raisins. His mother, well-versed in Persian literature and history, supplemented the strict religious education provided by his father. This was a world shaped by tradition, but also by the shadow of the throne. His childhood home had no luxuries, but it was a fortress of faith. To understand the man, one must first understand the nation he was born into. A nation that had avoided colonization, but was about to undergo a seismic internal shift. For centuries, Persia, as it was long known, stood as a proud empire, a buffer between the Ottoman, Turks, and the Indian subcontinent. The Safavid dynasty had cemented Twelver Shia Islam as the state's identity, a theological choice that still defines it today. By the early 20th century, the Qajar dynasty was weakening, and in 1921, a military commander named Reza Khan seized power, establishing the Pahlavi dynasty. His son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, would inherit a throne that attempted to modernize Iran along secular Western lines. But beneath the surface of this modernization, the ancient rhythms of faith continued to beat. In the 1950s, a young Ali Khamenei began his formal religious studies, immersing himself in the works of scholars like Ayatollah Sheikh Hashem Qazvini in Mashhad. He then made a brief pilgrimage to Najaf, the Iraqi city home to the shrine of Imam Ali, the first Shia Imam. This short trip to a foreign seminary would be the closest he ever got to completing the highest level of religious scholarship, a fact that would later haunt his legitimacy. Returning to Iran, he settled in the city of Qom, the intellectual heart of Shia learning. It was there, in 1957, that he met his destiny. A fiery, charismatic cleric named Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini was already a vocal critic of the Shah, viewing his secular reforms as a betrayal of Islam. The breaking point came in 1963 with the Shah's White Revolution, a package of reforms that included land redistribution and women's suffrage. To the clergy, this was an attack on their traditional authority. When Khomeini denounced the Shah, he was arrested. The arrest sparked massive riots, leaving hundreds dead and marking the beginning of a long, simmering conflict. Khomeini was eventually forced into exile in 1964, first to Turkey, then Iraq, and finally France. Khamenei, however, stayed behind. He left Qom and returned to Mashhad to care for his aging father, who was losing his sight. This act of filial piety would have profound consequences, as it effectively ended his formal, religious training just as the revolution was about to begin. While his teacher plotted from abroad, Khamenei became a domestic organizer, translating the works of radical Sunni thinker Sayyid Qutb, whose calls for Islamic revolution against secular regimes resonated deeply. His translation of The Future in Islamic Lands included a foreword declaring that the future belongs to Islam. The Shah's secret police, Savak, took notice. Throughout the late 1960s and 1970s, Khamenei became a target. He was arrested multiple times, enduring months of imprisonment and solitary confinement. In 1975, he was held for 8 months in Tehran, his family left in the dark about his whereabouts. Undeterred, upon his release, he helped found the Association of Combatant Clergy, a group dedicated to overthrowing the monarchy. During these turbulent years, he also built a personal life, marrying Mansoure Khojaste Bagherzadeh in 1964. His wife would remain a ghost to the public. No photos, no interviews, a deliberate anonymity that shielded the supreme leader's family from scrutiny. They would have 6 children, living a life that remained surprisingly modest, even as his political star began to rise. By 1977, the pressure on the Shah's regime was reaching a breaking point. Protests swelled, fueled by economic discontent and brutal police crackdowns. A pivotal moment came in August 1978 with the Cinema Rex fire in Abadan, where over 400 people were trapped inside a burning theater. While Islamic militants were likely responsible, the public blamed Savak and the Shah. The regime, increasingly isolated, pressured Iraq to expel Khomeini, who then moved to France, where he could communicate more freely with his followers. Back in Tehran, Khomeini was quietly working as a member of the clandestine Islamic Revolutionary Council. When the Shah finally fled Iran in January 1979, the world saw Khomeini's return. But men like Khamenei were the ones who had been laying the groundwork for years. On February 1, 1979, Khomeini landed in Tehran to a hero's welcome. 10 days later, the monarchy collapsed. But the revolution was not a single unified movement. It was a coalition of clerics, secular nationalists, and leftists, all united against a common enemy. Over the following months, a brutal power struggle ensued. Khamenei, as a founding member of the Islamic Republican Party, played a key role in purging the military and state institutions of those loyal to the old order. By December 1979, the clerics had won. A new constitution was ratified, establishing Khomeini as the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The new regime was fragile, facing threats from counter-revolutionaries, including the Marxist People's Mojahedin and the militant Forkan group. Khamenei, now a member of parliament and the leader of Friday prayers in Tehran, was a prime target. The Forkan group was determined to dismantle the very system of clerical rule that Khamenei was helping to build, and they had a plan. On that fateful day in June 1981, a Forkan operative disguised as a journalist placed the booby-trapped tape recorder on a table in front of him. The device whistled, then exploded. Shrapnel tore through his body, severing nerves and damaging his vocal cords. He survived, but his right arm was permanently paralyzed, and his voice was reduced to a soft, strained whisper. Remarkably, just weeks after the attack, Khamenei was on the ballot for the presidency. They tried to silence him with a bomb. They only gave him a louder platform. The previous president had been impeached and his successor assassinated. In the chaotic environment of the new republic, Khamenei was seen as a safe, loyal pair of hands. On October 2, 1981, he was elected the 3rd president of Iran. For the next 8 years, his presidency was dominated by a single catastrophic event: the Iran-Iraq War. Saddam Hussein had invaded Iran in 1980, fearing the spread of the Islamic Revolution to his own Shia majority, but Sunni-led country. Armed with Western weaponry, he expected a quick victory. Instead, he got a bloody 8-year stalemate that cost over 1 million lives. As president, Khamenei visited the front lines and oversaw a harsh domestic crackdown, but he also emerged as a moderate voice, privately favoring peace negotiations as early as 1982. He was overruled by Khomeini and the hardliners, a lesson in power dynamics he would never forget. The war finally ended in 1988, leaving both nations devastated. By 1989, Khomeini was in failing health. The question of succession loomed large. The Assembly of Experts, a powerful body of clerics, knew they needed a swift transition to Project Strength. But who could possibly fill the shoes of the revolution's founder? Khamenei was not the obvious choice. He lacked the high-level religious credentials. The title of Ayatollah was a stretch for a man who had never completed his advanced studies. He was a political insider, not a marja or source of emulation for the world's Shia. Yet he was a survivor. He had proven his loyalty in prison and after the assassination attempt. On June 4, 1989, the day after Khomeini's death, the Assembly elected Ali Khamenei as the second supreme leader of Iran by a vote of 60 to 14. He was 50 years old. The world around him was changing rapidly. The Soviet Union was collapsing, creating new independent republics on Iran's northern border. Iraq invaded Kuwait, drawing the United States into the region. The Lebanese civil war was ending, and Afghanistan was descending into chaos. Khamenei's first task was to consolidate his own power. He did this primarily by massively expanding the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, the ideological army created by Khomeini. Under Khamenei, the IRGC grew into a parallel state, controlling vast economic interests and answering only to him. He meticulously handpicked its commanders, ensuring their absolute loyalty. Today, its 125,000 members form the backbone of his authoritarian rule. Abroad, Khamenei adopted a strategy of proxy warfare. He deepened Iran's support for Hezbollah in Lebanon, a Shia militant group formed in 1982 to fight the Israeli invasion. Throughout the 1990s, he also began funding Hamas, a Sunni Palestinian group dedicated to resisting Israel. This was a pragmatic, not a theological alliance. Any enemy of Israel was a friend of Iran. This network of proxies would become the most powerful tool in his geopolitical arsenal, allowing him to project power across the region without direct confrontation. Another legacy inherited from the Shah was the nuclear program. What began as a Western-backed project in the 1950s became a point of intense international conflict under Khamenei. Throughout the 1990s, Iran accelerated its efforts with assistance from China and Russia, developing key facilities at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. Khamenei has always insisted the program is for peaceful, civilian energy. But for a nation sitting on the world's largest gas and oil reserves, this justification strains credibility. The nuclear program became the central issue in Iran's relationship with the West, leading to crippling economic sanctions that have strangled the country's economy. Why would a nation endure decades of isolation and poverty for power plants it doesn't need? The world fears the answer is a bomb. Despite sanctions, Iran's economy grew in fits and starts, buoyed by oil sales to China. But the IRGC wealth has not trickled down. With a population of over 90 million, Iran's GDP per capita lags behind nations like Algeria and Bolivia. This economic stagnation is a primary source of discontent, especially among the young. The political system offers a veneer of democracy. Elections are held, and presidents are elected. But all candidates must be vetted by the clerics. In 1997, the reformist Mohammad Khatami won the presidency in a landslide, ushering in a period of cautious liberalization. For a time, Khamenei tolerated this, allowing Khatami to pursue his agenda of greater freedom of expression. But the tolerance had limits. In 1999, when student protests erupted in Tehran over the closure of a reformist newspaper, Khamenei saw a direct threat to his authority. The security forces cracked down hard, with dozens killed and over 1,000 arrested. This was the turning point. The reform era was effectively over. When Khatami's successor, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, faced a disputed election in 2009, the Green Movement protests were met with brutal force. The IRGC was deployed, mass arrests were made, and the internet was censored. Khamenei had shed any pretense of moderation, fully embracing the role of a hardline autocrat. This shift was accompanied by a tightening of social control. In 2005, he ordered the creation of the Gasht-e-Irshad, or Guidance Patrol, the morality police. Reporting directly to him, this force enforces strict Islamic codes, particularly regarding women's dress. It was this unit that, in 2022, arrested a young woman named Mahsa Amini for allegedly violating the headscarf law. Her death in custody sparked the largest wave of protests since the 1979 revolution, with women at the forefront, burning their headscarves and chanting for the downfall of the regime. Khamenei's response was, once again, uncompromising repression. The Arab Spring of 2011 posed the ultimate test. As dictators fell in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya, protesters took to the streets of Tehran on the Day of Rage. But Khamenei had learned the lessons of 1999 and 2009. He was ready. While protests in Cairo's Tahrir Square grew, those in Tehran were swiftly crushed by the IRGC, with even Hezbollah units reportedly deployed to help. The regime held. Stability was maintained, but at the cost of further alienating a population yearning for change. Internationally, Khamenei's strategy seemed to be paying off. In Yemen, the Houthi rebels, another Shia proxy, seized the capital Sana'a in 2014 and bogged down a Saudi-led coalition in a devastating war. In Iraq, Iranian-backed militias filled the vacuum left by the departing U.S. troops. In Syria, Iranian support was crucial in keeping President Bashar al-Assad in power. Khamenei had built an arc of influence stretching from Tehran to the Mediterranean. He also forged strong alliances with Russia and China, positioning Iran as a key player in the emerging multipolar world order. Then came October 7, 2023. Hamas's attack on Israel and the devastating Israeli response in Gaza triggered a chain reaction that unraveled Khamenei's carefully constructed network. Hezbollah began firing rockets into northern Israel, and the Houthis attacked shipping in the Red Sea. But this time, Israel struck back with unprecedented force and sophistication. Hezbollah's leadership was decapitated by a stunning attack that turned its members' own pagers and walkie-talkies into bombs. Its military infrastructure in southern Lebanon was pummeled from the air. Hamas was crippled. The Houthis were bombed by the US and UK. The paper tiger had been exposed. For the first time, Iran and Israel traded direct missile strikes. Then, in a dramatic escalation in 2025, Israel launched coordinated attacks on Iran's nuclear and military facilities, killing key scientists and commanders. Khamenei was forced into hiding, reportedly making plans for his succession should he be assassinated. The United States joined the bombing campaign. After decades of building a fortress of proxies, the supreme leader found himself alone, looking over the wall. The carefully constructed strategy of forward defense had collapsed. Ali Khamenei has been one of the world's longest ruling leaders, a constant figure in a region of chaos. From the Cold War to the War on Terror, he has navigated Iran through decades of isolation and conflict. His life's work was to build a system that could withstand the pressure from without and the dissent from within. For a long time, it worked. But the events of 2024 and 2025 have revealed the profound vulnerabilities of his regime. The proxies are shattered, the economy is in ruins, and the population is deeply alienated. He rose to power through a combination of luck, survival, and political maneuvering. He consolidated it through an iron grip on the military and a brutal crackdown on dissent. He projected it through a web of proxies that extended his reach across the Middle East. But now, that power is evaporating. As the elderly supreme leader faces his final years, the question is no longer about his legacy, but about what comes next. Will the Islamic Republic as he built it survive him? Or will the reformist dreams he crushed in the 2000s finally rise again, reshaping Iran for a new generation? The struggle for the future of the Middle East is only just beginning. What do you think of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's rule? Is he a master strategist defending his nation against foreign aggression, or an architect of repression who has left his country weak and isolated? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you for watching Winds of Thought.